We've got some big news to take a look at here today involving the New York Rangers. As first off, we'll be taking a look at a new player the New York Rangers have signed, but also we've got some pretty interesting news surrounding a certain superstar that could potentially become available in next summer's free agency, as there was a massive historic NHL contract that was declined by this superstar. So it seems like maybe things are going in a direction where they end up actually hitting free agency, which definitely could be a pretty phenomenal thing for the New York Rangers. So we're going to talk about that certain superstar that may end up potentially being able to join the Rangers next summer. And also, we're going to take a look at the new signing the Rangers have made. And that's where, of course, we're going to start off with Andrej Sustr, the former NHL player coming back over to North America. And it seems like he has, of course, signed a professional tryout with the Rangers. So it is not an official kind of signed deal where he's going to be guaranteed with the team for the entire season, but of course, it seems like there is a chance of that happening. And, more than likely, I would guess it's probably in definitely a depth role for sure. But I think that could be a pretty decent move for the team, which I think could use in kind of adding in a guy like this. He is, of course, a right-handed defenseman. He's about 6'7" there. He's over 200 pounds, but 215 pounds or so. He is 34 years old, so he's a bit of an older player, but has a lot of experience at the NHL level, the AHL level. He's played over in the KHL in Russia. He's played over in the DEL, the German league. He's played over in Czechia. He's played over in the Finnish league, Liga there. So he's got a lot of experience in pro hockey, playing in multiple different countries, multiple different leagues over in Europe. He's, of course, like I said, had a nice, pretty good long career in the NHL, having 361 games played in the NHL, having 46 playoff games played as well. So he's got a lot of experience at the NHL level. Of course, he's not known as a really offensive defenseman, definitely more of a defensive guy, but he still got 69 points in his NHL career, so pretty solid numbers there, and hasn't been in the league since 2021-22 when he was with the Anaheim Ducks, as he had 23 games played that season there, 5 points. The last time he was in North America was 2022-23 when he spent that season split between the Iowa Wild and San Diego Gulls. And the last 2 seasons he has spent playing in Europe. In 2023-24, he was with the Cologne Sharks in the DEL, the German league, having 44 games played, 2 goals, 18 assists, 20 points. You got to remember those, European leagues are normally a little kind of lower scoring compared to over here in North America for the most part on average. So those numbers are definitely pretty solid for a, more defensive guy, of course. Then you've got in 2024-25, so this past season he was with 2 different teams, one in Czechia playing for Pardubice HC, having 16 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, and then he also, like I said, played for another team in Finland, this time in the Liga, the top Finnish league for Tampere, having 38 games played, 1 goal, 11 assists for 12 total points. And also had 8 playoff games played, no points with Tampere as well. But overall, I think he's just a kind of solid depth pickup there. He can be a nice kind of body in there for, some extra competition there for training camp. He could be a nice kind of guy to, battle for a spot alongside a guy like Scott Moore, young kind of prospect, 22-year-old defenseman there is going to try and earn his own spot, and then adding in a guy like Sustr who can kind of compete alongside him for that kind of spot, I think is a good thing. They're obviously just adding some more competition to get guys pushing a little harder. So I think overall it's not a crazy big impactful move, but just adding in a solid kind of vet here who's got a lot of experience. He's a big, tougher kind of guy as well, so kind of fits that sort of need, I guess. Obviously that great size there, 6'7". He does have that kind of hard-nosed style of play a bit, so I think adding in that in a kind of depth role there, if he is in the AHL, maybe a bit this season, possibly with the Rangers, or maybe get a taste at the NHL a little bit. Once again, we'll have to wait and see. But either way, I think it's just a nice kind of pickup here on a professional tryout option for the Rangers. And now we're going to take a look at the massive news that came out earlier this week, as we ended up seeing Frank Seravalli tweet out on September 10th that sources say Minnesota Wild superstar Kirill Kaprizov's camp turned down an extension offer believed to be 8 years, $128 million in a meeting on Tuesday in Minnesota that would have made him the highest paid NHL player in history in both AAV with $16 million and total dollars as well. So obviously a lot of people were quite shocked by this kind of news that came out, with it being such a massive number and it being, $2 million more than the next highest paid player currently, with that being, Leon Draisaitl at about like 14 million per. So it's obvious that this was a massive offer. And we did get some kind of interesting news that kind of came out a little after this, as Bill Guerin, the Minnesota Wild general manager, did go on a Minnesota-based podcast called 10,000 Take Show, and they had him on there, and they ended up kind of talking about this whole situation. So Bill Guerin goes on to say on the podcast, "My role as general manager is to protect our players," Guerin told the 10,000 Takes show. "I know two things. That info didn't come from us, and it didn't come from Kirill's agent. I don't know where it came from. Kirill's agent and I have a very good relationship. We're working through things. We're not going to let things like this get in the way." And he also goes on to say, "I don't want our market to go into an all-out panic mode here," Guerin said. "The most important thing to me is Kirill and not getting him put in a bad spot. We love him. He's a wonderful guy. He's an unbelievable player, and we want him." And honestly, none of that is surprising at all. Of course, the Minnesota Wild would love to keep their, top superstar kind of guy, their best player in pretty much franchise history, you could say, of course. So I think it's obvious that that's a guy who the Minnesota Wild definitely would want to and need to keep around long term if they want to have a chance at, really eventually, being able to go on these long playoff runs and possibly, make a Western Conference final and win a cup possibly, or make that cup final. They're going to have to keep a guy like Kirill around unless they're going to go out there and find that next Kirill. So to me, they're going to have to offer him an insane amount of money, and they've obviously already done that. And that's kind of the interesting part to this, where they have gone out there and given him that $16 million deal per season. And the big key part of this kind of interview, though, and kind of what we got from this was the fact that, the key words that Guerin used was, that info didn't come from us, and it didn't come from Kirill's agent. He said, "I know two things, and those were the two things." So that's kind of where it seems like, he's not really denying that Kirill maybe, declined that offer. He's just saying that he didn't really know how that kind of got out, I guess. So maybe I'm reading between the lines too much there, but to me, that's kind of what he's obviously saying, is basically like that news is kind of correct, but it just didn't come from us or Kirill's agent. So I don't exactly know whether that's 100% fact or not, but if it is, which I kind of feel like it definitely could be, because Frank Cervalli is, of course, a very trusted guy, and we obviously know that, Guerin didn't come out here and just, outright kind of decline that and say, "No, we did not offer him 16 mil. He did not decline that." So at the end of the day, as of right now, to me, I'm kind of guessing that maybe there was a bit of a deal like this kind of declined, and maybe Kirill really is kind of thinking about moving on from the Minnesota Wild. And to me, that would make a lot of sense. And, no disrespect to the Minnesota Wild, their fans, of course, but at the end of the day, the Minnesota Wild have not been a historically great franchise, of course, right? They have not been anything too special. They have not won a cup. They're one of a, decent few little teams that haven't won a cup, but they're one of those teams there. They haven't gone on really any crazy long playoff runs for the most part either. They've gone on a couple little decent ones a while ago, but they haven't done a whole lot as of late, especially. So to me, it definitely could make a lot of sense that maybe a guy like Kirill wants to move on and go somewhere else, and maybe he's able to sign for even more money, although I kind of doubt that. I feel like they'd almost match any other offer that some other team would possibly offer if, he ends up getting to free agency next summer. So I think it's really going to come down to whether or not Kirill wants to be in Minnesota. I think whatever money he wants, they'll probably be willing to give him. So it's just up to him whether or not he wants to stay there or leave. And at the end of the day, I think it would make some sense, like I said, if he wants to leave, because like I said, they have been a great franchise, and maybe he would want to go somewhere else and maybe, go alongside a guy like Igor Shesterkin and a Vladislav Gavrikov, maybe a Artemi Panarin, who maybe signs on a super team-friendly contract. I doubt it, but that's obviously a possibility. Maybe he wants to go somewhere else and join some other kind of top Russian guys, or just go somewhere else where he feels he has more of a chance to potentially go out there and actually really go on, these long playoff runs, really compete for that cup. So I don't know exactly what's happening as of right now and kind of truly what's going on behind the scenes with the situation, of course, but from what I can tell, as of right now, it does kind of seem like Kirill probably did decline a pretty massive extension offer from the Wild, and it does seem like there is definitely a somewhat chance that he will potentially end up hitting free agency next summer. It's not a guarantee, and honestly, I would lean more likely towards the side of him signing back with the Wild, but at the end of the day, it is definitely quite possible he does end up hitting free agency. And if he does, the Rangers should be one of those teams that are absolutely making those calls there and talking to him, as he could be an absolutely perfect replacement for Panarin, or he could be a great guy to bring in alongside Panarin if Panarin was obviously willing to take more of a kind of cheaper discount deal. But at the end of the day, Kirill is a superstar, top talent kind of guy, and there's going to be some other potential stars out there as well in next summer's free agency. You got guys as of right now who are still, haven't been given extensions, guys like Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, even Martin Netschas you can throw in there, and of course Panarin and Kaprizov themselves. So there's going to be some potential big names available. Whether or not most of them end up hitting free agency, we'll have to wait and see. And of course, I'm assuming guys like Eichel and McDavid and like I said, probably Kaprizov, I would assume maybe will end up signing an extension as well. But some of these guys will definitely come off the board. But I do think there will be maybe one or two of these guys at least that do end up hitting free agency. And if they do, the Rangers should be one of those top teams going after them, as we do potentially have a lot of cap space opening up there if this team does not decide to re-sign Artemi Panarin. And that's a whole other story as well that I've talked about in past videos. And of course, we'll have more videos talking about that situation as we continue on and get further and further into this season and kind of see how things play out for the Rangers, as that is going to be a very interesting situation to follow as we get into this season here and see how the team plays and kind of what they decide to do with Panarin. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on the Rangers picking up Andrej Sustr, a former NHL player, on a professional tryout option? And also, what are your thoughts on Kirill Kaprizov potentially becoming available, as maybe he did end up declining that massive historic $16 million cap hit per season? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.